Steve Malcolm says he wants your cat. Richie's cats are very well behaved. Richie's cats are.
Yeah, that's Patches. Essentially, my daughter loves that cat. So, but she hangs out here because my daughter loves that cat. So she's like Elmira. She's like Elmira from Tiny Toon Adventures. I love it. It's squishy. So she hides out here. Just I'll protect the cat.
Dodging. Yeah, sure. She wants her anonymity. She looks like she wants to go outside.
Oh no, that's just a facade. She's good. She's good. She's lizard watching. Is what she's doing.
Oh wow. Oh sure. Yeah. When's the moving countdown? When do you guys move out? It was like in the 20th?
We still haven't finalized with the new contractor yet. They were here this morning taking more measurements. They've been trying to find like plans for our house, and they were lost in the Dade County fire, I guess, way back when. So she was at the records today and looking and couldn't find anything. So they took measurements, and so maybe an architect will need to come out and do all that work. I hope not. They don't need the plans to do the work. They may need the plans to pull a permit. That's really the big question. So we'll find out. We'll find out soon.
Meanwhile, my apartment lease ends the end of July, and so the company that owns the building is coming in to do photos of the unit to list it in realty sites. And I'm just like, oh, so our stuff is going to be part of this apartment's listing for like all the time, because they're never going to go back and take more pictures, right? Well, they're going to be completely freaked out by my collection of art.
I was just going in there. It's like, oh my God.
It's going to be, I'm sure,
smiling children with bloody knives.
Yeah. Can you maybe take some of that art down?
No.
And then it's the same thing. I said also, you need to get that our master bedroom is my office. It's not like we have a bed in here. It's a desk set up and huge camera lights and all this. I said, if you come in, during the work week or whatever, it's going to look like it's an office. No one's going to want to rent this apartment, but like you should
maybe for $1,250, Brent. Maybe for $1,250.
We were looking at, so Richie found this video. It was BuzzFeed. I think it was BuzzFeed. Yeah. For what you get in $1,250 in Miami versus $1,250 per month versus what you get in Chicago. And I was just like, where in Chicago can you possibly find? Where in Miami can you find?
Miami, yeah.
$1,250.
Yeah.
And they were 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartments. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, no way.
And they never tell you where.
Yeah.
They're like, 20 minutes out of downtown. For what? Via teletransporter? What? I mean, is Scotty beaming you around? And one woman said, 5 minutes from the beach. No way in hell! I'm sorry, you couldn't even get a closet for that much.
No. Somebody in the YouTube comments had a good point. They're like, it's between her and her 3 roommates. Her share is $1,250.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That makes more sense. Not in Chicago. All right, let's see what we got here for technical questions. Ron asks, recommendations for using full text index. My database is about 50 gigs. I'm going to want to index about 5 tables with about 1 million row each. 30% of the database is images, which doesn't need to be indexed. So I guess 70% times 50 gigs, about 35 gigs. Richie, if you wanted a full text index 35 gigs worth of data, what would you do?
Elasticsearch.
And is how do you go about implementing that, or where would you recommend that someone go read for more information about how you do it?
I don't know. I guess Pluralsight would be as good a place to start. Because at least then you could get up and running really, really quickly, at least on the easy scenarios, at least to get something out there and cranking. The one thing you do have to worry about is security. If you have any data that needs to be secure, I'm not quite sure how you would necessarily handle that. If it needs to be encrypted or something like that. I think they've got some stuff in there, but I haven't taken a look at it since I started working here, oddly enough. So that's at least, 3 years or something like that. But yeah, Elasticsearch, and there's so much more you could do with Elasticsearch, and you can with full text search and SQL Server. I mean, just the querying scenarios alone they're amazing, they're phenomenal. You could do querying from URLs. I mean, it is right now the gold standard if you want to do any sort of things like that. So take a look in Elasticsearch. I guess Solar is another one, but Elasticsearch is just a step ahead of Solar at any given time. So yeah, check that out.
You might be wondering why we don't recommend SQL Server's full text indexing. It's fine if you need to get started and you can literally only have one box. Like they're like, sorry, you can only have one server. That's all you can ever have. But you can run Elastic on VMs. Just as long as you can implement cheap VMs, it's open source. You can run it on Linux. It's free.
Yeah, and just from the what you can do from a query scenario. I mean, if you want to query there's like keywords you can't use inside full text search. I mean, and you start scratching your head, well, why can't I do that? That doesn't make any sense. Well, you could do it from a URL perspective in Elasticsearch, and it's all there. And you could get pretty complicated, searching scenarios, and you're digging into certain things, and yeah, it's a big rabbit hole once you start getting down that. But man, it's a fun rabbit hole when you start figuring stuff out.
If you're going to start something in the year 2018, it makes more sense to go that way.
Yeah.
One of the bumps we hit at Stack Overflow was you couldn't search for a term like .NET 3.5. That combination of things, just punctuation and all that.
Yeah, and I believe you do need to move the data over to Elasticsearch Server. It's not like they can plug into SQL Server and everything's grand. So you will have to worry about getting data out and those type of things. But man, the power you get compared to what something you get in SQL Server, which they haven't touched in how long, Brent?
Yeah.
When was full text search? Was it 2005?
2012? No, they did a redo of it in 2010
Okay.
or 20. I think it was 2010. In 2008, R2 was when I think they did the redo. But
yeah, but even then, it pales in comparison to what we could do these days with Elasticsearch and Solar.
This is also why you see people getting so excited about NoSQL databases. I was just talking to a user group last night about that. That they said there was all this buzz about NoSQL databases, and what is it that they can do that we can't do? And they just make design choices. For example, with Elasticsearch, there's not really the concept of security and auditing. It's just anybody who was on the network could make queries against that server. And for a lot of stuff, that's fine. For a lot of kinds of full text stuff that you're doing, products in a catalog, etc., it is totally okay and is so insanely blazing fast because that's what it's designed to do. Mm-hmm. With full text search, they kind of stapled, or SQL Server's full text search, they kind of stapled it into the database engine.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you inverse that, right? It's like, well, if you want to start storing data in Elasticsearch, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, Yeah. So, when you talking looking at these specialized tools to do specialized things like searching or document storage and things like that, that's what you use NoSQL for. It's in addition to what you need to do with SQL Server, not instead of.
That's also a great way of saying it because I believe that if you could only pick one database, like if you're only allowed to run just one data persistence layer, you're only allowed to use one database, I think you could do a lot worse than SQL Server. SQL Server does a lot of things really well. But as soon as you start going, my needs are high enough that I want to add in a different layer or a different database persistence area, different data persistence area, then that's where these other solutions are phenomenal.
Yeah, and that's where you really need to get to understand what my requirements are, what my needs are, what are the needs of the business in the future, and those type of things. Well, and start really pie in the sky. Well, what do we really need to do? If I get this one thing done and it's really successful, well, what's the next step? And if they tell you, well, we want to do more of that, then it's more like, well, SQL Server can't do more. I mean, we've hit the limit at version 1, So at that point, would it make sense to go further out and whatnot? So these are the type of questions that you need to start asking your business and the people who know the functionality, because you probably won't know right off the bat. You could just say, oh yeah, SQL Server, get that done, but maybe in their head, 2 years down the road, they're thinking something else, so you will need that room to grow.
Yeah. And I don't think full text is an area that Microsoft's really investing heavily in SQL Server. I think they're adding lots of functionality to different areas. I don't think full text search is a big area of focus for them.
No, it's one of those things that you're not really growing, right? I mean, you kind of understand the scope of everything, and excuse me, full text in Elasticsearch kind of handles all of that. And they're not really adding a ton of new features into Elasticsearch either. I mean, it kind of is what it is.
Does what it does. Yeah, does what it says on the label.
Yeah.
Pablo says, hola amigos, the last 4 days my virtual SQL server got restarted due to an energy outage. Woohoo! No Windows logs about it, but Xevent shows me a resource, or mem physical high. Can something related to memory take down the server? Where can I check? That's really a tough one. So memory mem physical high, that doesn't sound like you're running into a problem. That sounds like, from what I remember with extended events, that you're totally okay, like there's plenty of memory available. So I wouldn't dig deeper into that one. That wouldn't be the place that I would go. I would jump back to the Windows layer, because it's not something at the SQL Server layer that causes the entire box to restart. Usually it's something else. Kevin says, when I run SP Blitz first and I click on the details link, it opens in a new window and no XML is there. Why is this? It would depend on what was inside the details. I'm guessing it's one of these click to see details. You could even just hover your mouse over it to see what it is, or click on it in a different SSMS, like try someone else's SSMS. But it might also be to do with the line that you're on, like there's no more details about that particular error. Tishal says, I was trying to add a node to my cluster for always on high availability, but I keep getting an error that says the cluster node is not reachable. I can ping it both ways, and also I can ping the cluster name. Ooh, that's good. What I bet it is it so pings, when they go through, they're on certain ports. Connecting to each other for clustering or for things like always on availability groups are different ports, though. So what I like to do is Telnet. So Telnet is, Richie and I are old enough to know Telnet. You, Tishal, are probably way not as old and gray as Richie.
Before the web, Brent.
Yes. When I couldn't access Gopher, you checked with Telnet.
Finger, who needs that?
Yes. Oh, the finger command, and you would set a message on, so when someone fingered you, it would return a specific message, and people would put jokes in there.
Giving you the finger command.
Yeah. Can't understand why that didn't catch on. So what you do is you telnet into the ports that you're trying to get access to. So for example, with always on availability groups, it's port number 5022. By default, you may have set a different one. So you would telnet from one box to the other into port 5022 to see if you got a response back. Now, that's pretty old school. I'm sure there are probably other ways to check to see if all the ports are reachable, but I would start there with 5022, and if you can't, odds are there's some kind of firewall going between those two SQL servers. I guess I'd be a bad person if I didn't also mention, I would make sure to check to see that you have exclusions set up on your firewall. RP says, my users are connecting to SQL Server from an app, and they're providing SQL Server authentication. Sometimes they're unable to connect, and after we restart the SQL Server services, they're able to connect. We've checked, but we didn't find any issues. It's funny, is I'm tempted to recycle the telnet thing. What would be RP, what's the exact error message that you get? Like the exact error message from the client side, what's the exact error message that they're getting? And, second part of this, how long does it take to get the message? Does the message come back instantly, the error message, or does it take 30 seconds before it comes back? Because if it's 30 seconds, you may not be able to connect to the SQL Server. If it comes back instantly, it's connecting, but there's some kind of problem with the authentication. If it's taking 30 seconds, then the next level that I would try is actually what someone else earlier said, when Tishal said, is try to ping the SQL Server from the app server. Are you able to ping it? And if you're able to not able to ping it, it means they can't even connect to the SQL Server for some reason. Can't even connect to the Windows instance that it's on.
And are you in good relationships with the network guys? Because maybe they're in there. You're going, click, click, click.
Watch this. Tishal follows up and says the firewall is off on both. That's good. So at least it's not coming from inside Windows, but what I worry about is that it's somewhere in between the two boxes. Network switches, stateful packet inspection, it could be any number of things that it's dropping connection in between the two of those. So telnetting on port 5022, if you get a response or not, that'll be the next indicator. Telnet's kind of weird to use. Like sometimes the thing that comes back looks like it's a blank screen when you successfully connect. So for example, to test it locally first. Remote desktop into one of the boxes, Telnet into the port 5022 to make sure you get a response. You'll see what it looks like, and then try another non-functional port. You'll see how that looks. Let's see, next, Heather says, do y'all know of a good resource for learning the basics of Python on SQL Server 2017? Richie, if I put a gun to your head and said, go learn Python, where would you go?
Okay, so I think there's a difference here, right? So Python, I go to Pluralsight because that's kind of where I could learn the fastest, right?
Yeah.
They distill it down and they say, here's the things that are important. If I wanted to get a deep knowledge, I'd buy a book. If I just wanted to get up and running, it'd be Pluralsight or some sort of other video training type thing. I think your question was, how do I learn Python on SQL 2017? I don't know. It's one of those things where it's so new and it's not in the bread and butter of the SQL community. So you would be, if you said R, there'd be a little bit more resources because there's more data savvy people understanding R, but Python is a little different. I would say that Google around, I don't know of anybody giving any classes or anything. There may be something on at PASS this year at the summit, maybe one or two on that, but I wouldn't say, hey, I'm going to go to the PASS summit and learn Python on SQL 2017. You'll get a brochure level of knowledge, and that's about it. I would say if you may just have to get in and jump into the middle of it, and just start cranking on things and reading blog posts from the engineering groups and things like that, and see how things are actually working out. Because that's one of those things where it's just so new, and people really haven't gotten into it yet, and there's just not a lot of content out there. I watched somebody wrote a book and published it last week.
No, I bet you're right. So there's a couple of sessions on Python. They don't even focus just on Python. So there's one T-SQL-R in Python. There's another one, Data Science Tips and Tricks. But what I liked about where Richie was going with that is to go talk to who the speakers are. So and you don't even have to wait for PASS. So you can go contact those speakers now. Dejan Sarka does so much SQL Server work with new features. And I wouldn't even be surprised if he's in the midst of writing a book on this, because he's the kind of guy, I think he's cranked out like 20 SQL Server books. The guy is a machine. He's also really easily reachable on the web, does a lot of training classes, so I would just ping him and say, hey, what resources are out there? Carlos Bossi, also a really nice guy. I don't think he's written a book on this, but I would totally ping on him as well, just to go see if you can track him down and see what they know about how easy it is to get started. I'd also say, what pains are you trying to solve? Pinal points out learnpython.org. I'm going to put in that to send it to everyone. Learnpython.org, and let me throw it up on the browser as well. There's a lot of good stuff out there on just how to learn Python in general.
Yeah,
the trick is
good stuff. Yeah,
the SQL Server part.
Yeah, and that's the one that got me like, Yeah, actually, when you said machine, it reminded me of that comedian Bert Kirchner, I think. He's got a really funny thing about the machine. I'll forward it in chat. It's a little blue, people, okay?
That's our chat room. Our chat room is pretty blue. Julie says, I'm running select star from sysusers, order by name. I'm seeing users that start with a backslash. Why I said backsplash, I'll never know. It's causing errors when I'm trying to add the user. I can't run SPUser or drop user. Any ideas on how to fix? No, you got me there, other than obviously escaping him with square brackets, just to make sure that you got that. But I know Julie is way beyond that. We see her all the time in here. So that's the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head. I also think it's an awesome repro to try and do. If you can create the user and then have problems dropping it, this is one of those questions that goes over awesomely well on Stack Overflow or on dba.stackexchange.com.
Have you tried hitting the little pie icon in the bottom left of the screen, and then maybe that will unlock it?
The pie icon.
I'm surprised you didn't get that. That's the net with Sandra Bullock. That was like the whole thing.
Oh, I forgot all about that. That was so good. She had a little Volkswagen Cabriolet. We should have a
Of course, you would
classic
know
movie
the
review.
car, like
Yes.
Sandra Bullock drove in the net.
Yes. I can't remember the name of her co-star, the evil guy, but I can remember that she drove a VW Cabriolet.
All I remember as a technologist, even a young one back then, I'm like, this is crap. This is nothing. This is stupid.
But, you know, I remember that because one of the climax parts is she goes running into a computer show. I think there was a computer show because she wanted to access the internet. I'm like, wow, there were computer shows back then. It was like car shows today, but they would have the latest models.
And they were huge.
Yeah. And you would go by, like computer swap meets too. I would go to this school
Yep.
back in Memphis, and we would all go around. It was almost like you were going through LP records at a flea market. You were going through these different motherboards.
Yes. Oh, this mem slide looks good. Let me pick that one up.
Yeah. Different CPU fans, you know, try to figure out exactly what was the best one. Yeah, that was incredible. Bob Ward, Bob Ward says, oh, never mind.
Computer shopper, magazines
Oh,
with like phone books. It was
I would get so excited about that. I would, every time my computer shopper came out at the bookstore, I would go get it, and I would fold over all the pages of the best-looking cases, the cases that I really wanted to buy. Oh, those were good old days. We're
and now we
officially old.
just throw away machines. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
eh.
Daryl says, today's blog post is fascinating. All right, let's pull up today's blog post since, of course, on the recording, people won't know exactly what Daryl's talking about there. Today's blog post was about a VMware configuration, VMware Hyper-V configuration issue. He says, so you're saying I can put Standard Edition on a 24-core box, and Standard Edition will only use 4, and if I had the issue, SQL Constant Care would flag it. Yes. Now, it's not that way in most hypervisors by default. Most of them will intelligently configure CPU, but a lot of times over the years, we've either inherited a setup for someone else, or we just went and created a new VM. We didn't really know what we were doing, and we did the wrong CPU configuration. SQL Constant Care isn't the only way to flag it. You can also flag it with SP Blitz. Both of those work in terms of quickly telling you if you have that issue or not. And it's funny because it's not like a #1 priority issue. It's down in the teens, I think, teens or 20s. But it's just that you have cores sitting around idle. And worst case, I have seen people with memory sitting around idle and not able to use it.
Yep.
It's so fun to now get all the data with Constant Care and be able to trend this stuff and see, oh my God, we caught like 20 people with cores offline, and have this immediate turnaround difference.
Yeah, and everyone's so like, oh, I never thought to look at that. And it's like, well, why would you? I mean, it's one of those things that you don't even think about it. It's like, well, why would they do that?
Yeah. Or if they did it, why wouldn't it be a big red flashing message that, yo, dog, I can't use the rest of the cores? And I've talked to the rest of I don't know why I always go to yo, dog.
Yo, dog, I found some cores in your cores that are not being cored.
Yeah. I heard you like cores. Turn your cores on. And in fairness to the Microsoft people I talk to, when we go through this issue, they're like, well, look, we throw it in the startup event log. It's in there as a line. We're using this many cores. But no one ever looks. No one looks at their startup log. They never review it. And there's so much spam in there. There's so much garbage inside there that you don't read.
Exactly.
All right, well, that's all the questions that we got this week. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us, and we will see y'all next week at Office Hours. Adios.
Go Mexico.